Okay, welcome to our Eid of Shabbat special edition class on Parashat, and we will speak about Parashat, a new Parashat, but a new Sefer, the Sefer of Vayiqra, Perashat Vayiqra. The great book of Vayiqra opens up with a small letter Aleph. But let's dedicate this morning towards talking about what to us is ancient and antiquated, far beyond our lifetime seemingly, and very difficult to relate to. And that is this idea called korbanot, offering sacrifices. Let's talk about how much of the Torah, in terms of content, percentages, importance, volume, this concept and these laws really take up. There are 613 Taryag Mitzvot in the Torah. There are a whopping 142 combined Mitzvot Aseh and Lo Taseh, positive and negative commandments, relevant to the Korbanot. That is 23%, if you were trying to calculate, almost 1/4 of the Mitzvot of the Torah are about the Korbanot. There are a number of Masechtot. In fact, out of the 6 Sidrei Mishnah, one of them is called Kadashim, in which 9 out of the 11 Masechtot there are dedicated only to Korbanot, or largely to Korbanot. Most of Masechet Pesachim deals with Korban Pesach, and smattered throughout the rest of Shas, Torah Shebe'al Peh, Talmud Bavli, and Yerushalmi are discussions about Korbanot, besides the many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of associated halachot to Korbanot, and the handful of parashiot dedicated to Korbanot, as in maybe half the book, or close to half the book of Sefer Vayiqra, and other parashiot in the Torah as well. And the truth is, if you look at the idea of making an animal sacrifice, slaughtering an animal, ripping open its body, removing some of its innards, skinning it, throwing some parts onto a fire that's rising off an altar, eating other parts depending on the sacrifice. It seems to be, and you'll excuse the term, but just from an outsider perspective, in a very shallow, maybe first initial reaction that someone might have to thinking about and learning about and seeing a korban, it seems barbaric, right? It doesn't seem like a ritual that is worthy of our sanctified religion. If you just think about it in concept, it seems to be something that we would discourage if we saw other movements, religions, so to speak, performing such rituals. That would seem like, certainly nowadays, the animal rights people would be all over it. It'd be over, close down that altar overnight, right? But the truth is that besides that impression, there are a number of instances in the Nevi'im where the Nevi'im seem to speak disparagingly about Korbanot. Famous one would be in the first Perek of Yeshaya, where Hashem says through the prophet, Lama li rov zivchachem, do I need all your sacrifices? I don't want that, and I don't want Shabbat, I don't want the Rosh Chodesh. Forget about it, I don't want it. In Shemuel Aleph, this is a guidance and rebuke shmuz that Shemuel Hanabi gave the people, where he said, "Hachafes Adonai be'olot v'zbahim kishma v'kol Hashem." Does God want your sacrifices? Absolutely not, he said. The book of Yirmiyah, we find something similar. Ki lo dibarti el avotechem v'lo sivitim b'yom osiyeh otam eretz Yisrael v'divrei olav v'zabach. I didn't take out your forefathers from Egypt in order to offer sacrifices. Now, of course, all of those are in the context of rebuke, wherein Am Yisrael were, let's say, acting quote unquote religiously in other realms of Torah observance, such as the ritual of korbanot, and shirking and forsaking what are just equally important, maybe more important obligations. Sometimes it was treatment, ben adam lahavero, interactions with fellow man, lack of honesty and integrity, corruption, etc., etc. But you see from the Nevi'im clearly that if one were just to observe a korban as a ritual in a vacuum, that's something that's not only perhaps defeating the purpose, but it's abominable. It's rejected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we really have to find the beauty. We have to dig down deep and search for the depth, the beauty, and quite frankly, the magnitude of this idea and these mitzvot of korbanot. It takes up so much of our Torah. So let's offer a handful of theories to look at the idea and concept of korbanot. And even though this is not chronological order, I'm going to open with Ramban because Ramban Nachmani, because he really, in the opening discussion to Sefer Vayiqra, so this is really more directly relevant to our parasha. The opening of our parasha in the book of Vayiqra frames, as he always does, what the general theme and objectives of the Sefer, of the new book, are. And mainly, he points out that it's about korbanot, it's about the service of the Kohanim and Leviim in the Mishkan and subsequently in the Beit HaMikdash. And he speaks about the fact that truly, after we have been able in that first year of history in the desert to overcome some of our terrible flaws, the debacle of the Egel, and we've been able to make the Teshuvah, come back to God, thanks to Moshe Rabbeinu, successfully bring the Shekhinah back amongst us and be somewhat forgiven. And of course, now we're a nation who received the Torah, we're back on top of the world. We built this tabernacle, this Mishkan. We need these korbanot, says Moshe Rabbeinu, for kapara, just to maintain the status. Don't blow it, guys. Don't blow it. You got here, you reached the top, you're at the pinnacle. You need something to make sure, right? You got your blood pressure under control. Don't let it go up again. Take these pills, right? Am Yisrael needed blood pressure pills. They needed to find a way to maintain and assure their high status, and therefore, being that we're human and flawed, built into the system is the offering of korbanot that offer kapara to Am Yisrael, atonement for their sins. Now, I'll just add on to that a little bit and give you an idea of why this would offer atonement more than, let's say, observing Shabbat, Kashrut, etc. And part of the idea is that it's really done in the context of perfection. You have the most select, prestigious people, namely the Kohanim, performing something in the most, you can say, almost perfect manner, not just their physical activities and all the details. The prescription of offering every korban has to be done perfectly, but even their mindset, their thoughts have to be pure at the time of offering a korban. So it's performed by close to perfect people in a close to perfect manner. And of course, in the setting of the Shekhinah, the divine presence blatantly there in the confines of the Beit HaMikdash and in the area that korban is being offered on that great altar, that great mizbeach outside the Mishkan, the Beit HaMikdash. So because of the fact that setting is, you can say, the antithesis to sin. Sin is our flaw. Sin is our low-down animalistic behavior, and we perform an act of perfection to offset, so to speak, that behavior. It serves as kapara for us. One idea possible, a possible function of kapara, but that is Ramban's first opening statement in Sefer Vayiqra, that it's a great objective of korbanot, and that is offering atonement to us. Now, going a little further back in time, the Rambam, and I'll say famously, speaks about this and offers this as a reason, actually afterwards, for even having, we've spoken about this in past classes, the Mishkan and the idea of the Beit HaMikdash itself and other things that we do. But he's more known for giving the following reasons for korbanot specifically. And that is that Am Yisrael is a nation of God, chosen by God, with great ancestry, but in the tail end, well, not the tail end, in the midst of millennia and centuries and millennia, hundreds and thousands of years of human behavior before that period of time, and unfortunately continuing after that period of time, where mankind was absolutely stooped in paganism and idolatry and all kind of abhorrent behavior in terms of what they call their own observance and rituals and religion. And it's what we know as Avodah Zarah. That's the world that we came from. In fact, that's the world we were surrounded by for all those decades as slaves in Mitzrayim. That's what we're used to. That's what we nearly fell prey to after our great forefathers, our saintly forefathers, guided us in the right way. And here we are, expected to act like a saintly nation as if nothing happened. Collective cold turkey is not realistic, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't expect you to shed every aspect of human tendency up till now in the history of the world. You can't expect it to be saints to such a degree. It's not realistic. So what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is he borrows, he extracts some of the, in a vacuum, the physical habits of these paganistic peoples and of these ugly rituals of Avodah Zarah apparent throughout the planet Earth. And he takes them and allows us to engage in them. It's almost like Kiviyachol Lavdil, a smoker who's doing something to mimic smoking to get him off smoking. And he allows us to engage in rituals, which include animals, which include slaughtering, which include blood, which is completely physical. And with that, he begins to wean us off the mindset of Avodah Zarah, the practices of Avodah Zarah, with the eventual objective of eradicating idolatry and paganism from our nation completely and eventually off the face of the earth. And as he weans us off, we channel all those activities, all those practices, all those, that physical slaughter and dealing with blood and fire and consuming, etc., of the sacrifices, channel it to the single and only original almighty creator God. Funnel our activities and intent only to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Brilliantly, the Torah Kadoshah allows us to segue from paganism to being a nation that is completely monotheistic. Paganism to monotheism through korbanot. That was the plan. And the Rambam says, don't think that all these laws in mitzvot are just deflectors. Korbanot given, so you shouldn't do that. That's negative. They're default mitzvot. Don't think that, because they're all focused on a final goal. The objective is knowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's done via a brilliant system of using these physical rituals and guiding them, channeling them towards God. That, says the Rambam, is the reason for korbanot. Now, I will just mention on the side, as a by the way, that there are some that try to imply from the Rambam somehow, well, he never says this anywhere, that because of this, it means that korbanot are archaic and passé and will no longer come in the future Beit HaMikdash into practice. Why would anyone guess that in the words of the Rambam without him saying that? And why would anyone think that the Rambam would think that our Torah Kedushah, Chas v'Shalom, in any way, shape, or form would dissipate in any mitzvah at all, unless we're told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu or through his prophets that they will? We know there's statements of fact that sin offerings may not be in play. And they may be obsolete because we won't have sins. But the idea of korbanot will be intact, of course. And you'll ask, why, according to the Rambam, would there be korbanot then when we don't have to deflect paganism? Well, stay tuned for the rest of the class. And we have plenty of other reasons and objectives for korbanot. So if we want to move back a little bit in time again, as we started to do. The earliest theory we'll present to you is Rabbeinu Sa'adia Gaon, who just beautifully says that really when you give korbanot, you have to take the choicest of your possessions. Perfect animals, they were expensive at the time. When you bring flour offering, pure flour, good wine, etc. Basically, you are given the opportunity to take expensive commodities, things that are dear to you because of their value, and offer them to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the one and only God. That is an incredible opportunity that we have in giving korbanot, engaging in God and offering Him gifts at the same time. And very simply, Rabbeinu Sa'adia Gaon says, that is the wonderful opportunity of giving korbanot on a daily basis, representing the entire nation, and for whoever individually has the visit for various reasons, the Beit HaMikdash, to give his own personal korbanot. Then we have the Ibn Ezra and others. They speak about the model that's presented before us, the physical model when giving a korban. They think about the fact that korbanot affect both our ma'aseh, our activities as we're engaged physically in the korban, our dibur, our speech, as we have to actually speak words of repentance when giving the korban, if it's a sin offering, our mahshaba, our thought process, and we look at physical attributes of an animal that is similar to ours, legs and arms, and we look at them being burnt, we look at blood being spilt, ki hadam wa nafesh, the blood that keeps us alive, and we look at the model of something that is slaughtered and burnt at an altar that very much resembles us, and our senses are awakened, our sight, the sound, our thought process, it's all going, it's all awakened, and it dawns upon us that, wait a second, didn't I act with my hands and my arms and my mind wrongfully to get here? Indeed, if this is a sin offering, which were the vast majority of korbanot that were brought, isn't that why I'm here to begin with? And look at me up there, blood being spilled, limbs being burned. That could have been me. In fact, that should have been me. And you know what? Shame on me. The person feels first frightened, shaken, taken aback, then aroused and inspired to know that that's not me. And there's a korban, there's a sacrifice being offered instead of myself being offered as a sacrifice because of my folly, because of my sin, because of my rebellion against my creator, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in my sinful ways. My life is not being taken. Another life is being taken instead of mine. That's something that should shake one to the core when he sees such a scene and thinks in those terms. And that, says Ibn Ezra and others, is the purpose and objective, among others, for korbanot. And then we get, finally, to the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch points out that korbanot are completely physical. And as we just mentioned in the last theory, that a behemah shares with us bodily functions, shares almost all the same organs internally, externally, besides the fact that the form and shape is different, but the features, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the head, the throat, the legs, the feet, you can call it the hands, and most of what we embody, it embodies. And the fact that this physical being is being sacrificed, that's so similar to me, it really makes me, dawns upon me that I, in my sin, if that's why I'm here, behaved really like that being. I am an animal. I was an animal, but I rejected and I neglected the distinguishing factor that HaKadosh Baruch Hu distinguished me with, and that is my mind, my brain, my holy sechel, my holy thought process, which is directly connected to my neshama, the angelic part of me, the real essence of my being. I neglected that in order to behave like this behemah, animalistically. Look at what I did. Look at that and look at me. How different was I and am I being guilty of all these iniquities and behaving, quite frankly, like a behemah? You know what I'm going to do now? And I'm bringing this offering because I'm moving away from that in a different direction. Let's burn this. Let's absolutely consume this physicality. Let's give myself some shock therapy. I am a human being in a physical jacket of a body. But let me make a very important point right here in an extreme manner. That I'm not here because of my physicality. And I shouldn't and I can't be worshiping my physicality. That shouldn't be my pursuit. That shouldn't be what overwhelms me and guides me and drives me in my life. I'm not here to be a behemah. God's got plenty of millions of species on earth that are not human beings. I'm here to act like a Selim Elohim. I'm here to use my brain, my mind, which impacts my neshama, which is enveloped by a body, but only as an accessory to my being. That is what the korban and sacrifice offerer is inspired by, as he sees, as he brings a behemah, as he burns a behemah, and as he rids of physicality and commits himself instead to spirituality and to fostering a more powerful, close relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These gentlemen are 5 theories that I presented before you for Korbanot. There are others as well. They're all simultaneously true. They all coexist. They're all the objectives and goals of the infinite wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the brilliance of the Torah, and its 142 mizvot associated with Korbanot, and its many masechtot and parashiyot, all focused on Korbanot, the Korbanot that are meant to improve our lives, to inspire us, to offer us opportunities, and to bring us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the opening of the book of Vayiqra, the Perashat Vayiqra, and so much of our Torah Shebechtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh that introduces us to the wonderful opportunity as Jews, as we had and look forward to having again, of offering Korbanot. Shabbat